partnering with Tour Magazine and Seattle Out and About. We're a publication dedicated to international queer and gender-related issues. Today I'm sitting down with multimedia artist Christine Beaderstadt, and we're sitting down to talk about some of her work with Indian women.
So I'm a multimedia artist and I focus on Indian women adornment.
Okay.
My current project is called Time and Place, and I document how Indian women dress and how their dress is changing because of globalization.
So it sounds like you've done some extensive work here and in India as well. Can you tell me how you started on this project and where, tell me a little bit about how you got interested in Indian women's adornment.
Sure. I lived in India in 2005 and I did some photographic work there, and I had traveled around the subcontinent, going into the very northern part and then traveling all the way down to the southern part. And so when I was in the northern part and in the southern part and had traveled around, I noticed that you can tell how a woman, the background of a woman based on what she was wearing, so on her outer appearance. So in the northern part, women wore double earrings, where in the southern part they had just pierced one side of their nose. Women in different regions wrap their saris in a different way. So you can often look at an Indian woman and know whether she was Hindu or Muslim or identified with a different religious background, what her general caste was or socioeconomic background was, if she was widowed, if she had children. So, and based on her skin tone, what region she came from.
While you were doing work here, do you feel like the women who are coming over from India have been facing any challenges in the way they present themselves and the way they demonstrate their identity through adornment?
Well, most of the women that I've interviewed thus far have come from similar socioeconomic backgrounds from India. One woman was a lawyer in India, and she could only wear black and white when practicing law in a courtroom. So she told me she wore a lot of black saris. And then when she came here, she could no longer practice law, and so she adopted Western dress. Mm-hmm. Another woman relocated here just a few months ago, and she married an Indian man and moved here, and she had grown up wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Mm-hmm. And she went to an English boarding school, and so grew up wearing Western clothes. And she feels more comfortable wearing Western clothes because that's what she grew up wearing. And when she's dressed in her traditional garb that her family, for generations have worn, it takes her 2 hours to put on, as long as it would take, you or me. And so this, is very interesting because she is Indian, but she's wearing Western clothes, and that's what she feels comfortable in, and that's her identity. And she said that her cousins who did not go to boarding school, who did not grow up wearing Western dress, according to her, feel more shy and inhibited because they weren't given a chance, she said. So what I'm finding is interesting is that progression and modernity and the way women dress equates, being of a modern background and being more worldly and being more open-minded. Mm-hmm. So, my question is, why can't you wear the dress of your country and be thought of as being modern?
In starting this project, I know that you did some photography work and that you actually had some of the time and place photos featured in local galleries. Can you talk about maybe how that kind of evolved into what you're wanting to do now?
So this initially started as a photographic project because it's very visual. What do Indian women look like, and how do they dress, and what do women in the North look like as opposed to women in the South? And then the more that I did research and the more that I talked to women, I realized that a deeper and a better story can be told by accessing their visual and audio stories and hearing what they have to say. So when I was doing some scholarly research, I noticed that there was a gap in publications and then the gap in what people were looking at, what scholars were looking at. And that was they weren't accessing women's stories. They weren't talking to women. They were saying, so women used to wear 9-meter sari, and now they wore 5, and now they wear 3-meter long saris. And they would just kind of document like the progression, which is interesting, and it's very helpful. But they weren't saying, well, why did this happen? Why did women change the length of their sari? And how did it make them feel? Like, did it make them feel more comfortable? Did it make them feel sad? Was it, a more feminine looking sari that it was shorter as opposed to longer, or what was going on?
When you're interviewing Indian women here, do you feel like that pressure to assimilate is a pretty common theme?
I wouldn't call it a pressure to assimilate. I would say a willingness and a desire to become a part of the larger community.
Okay.
And so when I travel, I try to absorb as much of a culture as possible. And, I might cover my hair, or I might wear a skirt, or, I will try to blend in a little bit more out of respect for the culture, but also because that's what you do. You want to be people don't like being outsiders.
Right.
And so I think when people relocate here, especially from such a different place like India, women want to assimilate.
Yeah, it's a whole when in Rome mentality.
Right.
Yeah. As far as your project goes, 'cause I believe the next stage is taking a lot of this documentation overseas to India. Are you looking at, what processes and what steps do you need to take to make that happen?
Before I leave?
Yes.
Sure. Well, in the past couple months, I've partnered with a local organization in Gujarat, India, called SEWA, Self-Employment Women's Association, and they work with women in rural areas. So one of my goals of the project is to talk with women in rural and urban areas, because they often tend to dress differently. And so by partnering with this organization, we're able to access women that would be difficult for an outsider to access. That's one thing. And another thing, I've been talking with the Times of India to potentially print some of these articles and print some of the photographs, and to generate interest overseas. And also to interview local women. How are women here that have already relocated, that have experienced globalization to its height, how do they feel about dress? And how do they feel about the project? How do they feel about an outsider documenting the project? Are my questions accurate? Are my assumptions accurate?
So I know that you're partnering up with Belsun Productions on this. Can you kind of explain how that collaboration came about? And,
Sure.
How you see that affecting the, work as you go over to India?
Well, last spring I partnered with Belsun Productions, and Stefan and I met here in Seattle, and we were talking about the project. And I said, I'm doing audio stories, and I'm doing photography, and I'm going over to India to interview women. And we decided that to add another layer to the project, a video component would really help tell these people's stories. And so we partnered to add photography, audio stories, and video stories. And I think that it's more like peeling away layers of the onion. People can access women's stories in a variety of manner. And so they can see their photographs, they can read the text that I've developed about ornamentation, they can listen to podcasts, and they can see the stories. And so I really think that it's a valuable addition to the story of Indian ornamentation and how it's changing.
Would you say that your research along these lines has influenced the way you approach adornment yourself? Or has it made you think a little bit more about your presentation?
Absolutely. I think that it's allowed me to think that when people look at other people, we automatically make assumptions. And so when people look at me, what message am I telling people about myself? And so, when I get dressed in the morning, or I put on earrings, or I think about these things, and sometimes it's subconscious and sometimes it's not. Am I sending a different message to people that I wear rings on all of my fingers? And what message is that?
Well, where can we find out more about your projects online?
You can go to my website, christinebeaderstadt.com/time and place.
Perfect. Well, that's our interview with Christine Beaderstadt. If you have any interest in Tour magazine, take a look at our links below. We've got our blog link there, as well as the link to our print issues as well. Thank you very much. Bye.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.